Hello and welcome to a special segment here on the High School Huddle. Along with Phil Nichols, I'm Chris Evans, as we dissect the all-district 5A-2 teams that came out today, Phil. And once again this year, 5A-2 proves it's the best district in Class 5A and one of the tops across the state of Oklahoma. And a big part of that, Carl Everett and McGinnis playing in the fourth state championship in the last 5 years against each other.
Yeah, I mean, the results speak for themselves. I mean, you get two teams in the same district, and you throw in Guthrie, you throw in Piedmont. Piedmont's really came on the last few years. Of course, Guthrie, I believe, has the third most wins at 130 some over the last, how many years, Chris? 15
The last 15 years, yeah.
15 years. So you've got Carl Albert with the most wins, McGinnis with the second most, Guthrie with the third most, and all of them over 130 wins. So, very strong programs that year in and year out compete. As I said, Piedmont's really came on the last 2 years, and just top to bottom, it is the best district in 5A, and it's not even close.
Yeah, and you look at 5A-2, you mentioned the four teams. Of course, Carl Albert won the district, McGinnis finished second, Guthrie finished third, Piedmont finished fourth. Woodward was in that fight there for a little bit for that fourth spot. Lawton Eisenhower was a good team. I think COVID brought them down a little bit. They had a lot of players in and out toward the end of the year, but of course, Western Heights did not play all season long in 5A-2. But let's go ahead and take a look at the 5A-2 district, all teams here. And there's a lot of discussion here that you can have, Phil, when you look at the most valuable player, as it goes to Ben Harris at Carl Albert High School. What a career he had, Phil. 52-2 as a 4-year starter, 4 state championships. And remember, way back his freshman year, he was not scheduled to be the starting quarterback. There was an injury that went to a player. Bring in the freshman, and boy, that was one of the best coaching decisions Coach Corley in his 4 seasons has ever made.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Ben, and we talked earlier today when you called me when the team was first announced, the all-district team. And of course, for those folks that aren't in Oklahoma, I think it is important to understand that when you look at this is seniors only for the all-district team. I think that is a distinction that some states don't do it that way. Chris laughs at me every year because I'll throw out a kid that's a junior and he'll go, now Phil, remember, these are seniors. And but regardless of that, Ben Harris, I can make an argument for Luke Tarman. I think a lot of people could for being most valuable player, but I think they got it right at the end of the day. Ben Harris, as you said, 52-2, lost 2 games, started 4 years in 5A football, won 4 state championships, threw for over 2,000 yards plus every year. Just a phenomenal football player. And you pointed out something I think is real important to distinguish when talking about Ben Harris. He had about 500-600 yards rushing this year in the regular season. You had the playoffs, he probably got up there close to 1,000 actually, or probably an 800 or so. But they never asked him to run really, and so if he had been a kid that they would have asked to have run, he would have been well over 1,000 yards if he had needed to run more, I should say, but just didn't need to. But you can't go wrong when Ben Harris is your most valuable player for all district 5A-2 in 2020. I mean, it's well-deserved.
And then the offensive player of the year is Bishop McGinnis Luke Tarman, the quarterback that set school records this year, Phil. He's a 3-year starter as well. And without Luke Tarman, Bishop McGinnis would not be in the state championship game this season. He was everything for them offensively. There are some nice, we'll talk about some other Bishop McGinnis players here in a little bit that surrounded him on that offense when we get to Michael Taff, who a sophomore this year, then Cole Limber we'll definitely talk about as a wide receiver. They had good pieces, but it was all around Luke Tarman.
I mean, Luke rushes for over 2,000 yards. He throws for over 2,000 yards. He accounts for over 50 touchdowns. Those are the stats on why, if you just look at stats, why I think a lot of people would say, geez, he needs some consideration for MVP. And believe me, he got consideration. I promise you. Yeah. I promise you there was a lot of back and forth between Ben Harris and Luke Tarman, but this is an appropriate award. I mean, he's a super athlete. He will play somewhere next year. He's one of those kids I think that might be a little bit, they don't know what to do with him. I think might be hurting him a little bit in the recruiting efforts. Of course, Ben Harris, we didn't really talk about that, but Ben's going to get his college paid for playing college baseball. He's an outstanding baseball player. Could definitely play college football. There's no doubt about that. There would be a place for him out there, talking about Ben Harris. But Luke Tarman, an exceptional athlete, probably a little fast, probably faster than Ben if you were going to compare the two, a little more, can do a little more with his feet naturally. But, as an offensive player of the year, it's a no-brainer. How many kids have thrown for over 2,000, ran for over 2,000, and accounted for over 50 touchdowns? Very few in the nation. Very, very few. If you searched in all football sizes all across the great country of the United States, there'd be very, very few that can match those statistics.
Absolutely. And it's been a good, the coaches in the district come together and form this all district 5A-2 and come up with these awards. It would have been, I wouldn't mind just been on the, at the end of the table, just listening whether it was a teleconference. I'm sure it was a teleconference this year with COVID, but I would like to have been on that phone call. I would like there to be a recording so I can hear the back and forth on Ben Harris and Luke Tarman. Of course, Ben Harris won the head-to-head matchups and, all that good stuff, but,
and they won state and they won state.
Yeah. And won the district.
And won the district. And so, when you have that kind of success, and the other thing too, that doesn't get talked about a lot, Ben Harris is a fabulous punter. And he flipped the field numerous times for Carl Albert this year. We saw it in the state championship game when we were calling that game just last Saturday for the NFHS network. He had a punt that pinned him down inside the 3. He had a couple other punts that would pin them down deep in their own territory. And then for me, the play of the game sounds weird. It was on a punt, but he had that option as being a 4-year starter and a star that he is. Coach Corley, I'm quite certain, because it didn't look drawn up, said if you ever look out there and you see it, go get it.
Yeah.
And he did that late in the game that really kind of sealed the coffin for Bishop McGuinness and ensured Carl Albert that 4th straight state championship. But or actually 5th straight state championship, but they're just he's just a fabulous player. He could start on defense. They don't need him to, but he would.
Yeah.
Ben Harris. But I think you got to remember there's those intangibles on what does your team need you to do. And with Luke Tarman, McGuinness needed him to do everything. I was actually surprised, and there were times when he was on the defensive side of the ball. But over his 4-year career as a starter, he's a 4-year starter also. Now, he played other positions. He started at defensive back. He started at wide receiver. He's played tailback. He's played quarterback, obviously. The kid can kind of do it all. And so just both of them just fabulous players. But like I said, I think the coaches got it right. I think Ben Harris being the MVP is appropriate. And Offensive Player of the Year, I think, obviously, is Luke Tarman.
Defensive Player of the Year goes to Nathan Mooney of Carl Albert. The Lineman of the Year, they couldn't decide what to do here, Phil, so the coaches named 3 Linemen of the Year, 2 of them from Carl Albert. As you see, there's a lot of red on our chart here, but Wisdom Combs, lineman for Carl Albert. Noah Dotson, big guy, big on the end there of that offensive line. And then John Lopez, Bishop McGuinness, lineman of the year. And Bishop McGuinness, again, offensively, defensively at the lines, really not those big bodies like big Noah Dobson and Wisdom Combs, but they're so athletic and so smart. So for John Lopez to be recognized as the lineman, that's a good honor for him.
Yeah, and I think, you go up to the Defensive Player of the Year, Nathan, this is a kid that kind of gets lost in all the great players at Carl Albert. We were talking about it before we came on the air. We're going, now that we think back on it, he's there, but he's one of those silent killers, I guess, because he's just surrounded by so many great players. But obviously, if you're named the Defensive Player of the Year in the best district in 5A football, you can play a little football.
Yeah.
And so congratulations to Nathan. That's a well-deserved honor. Lineman of the Year, I don't know how big Noah Dotson is, but I know he's big.
Yes, he is.
He is a mountain of a man. And Wisdom Combs, another great Carl Albert lineman. They're there every year. And then it's nice to see Lopez, more of a technique kid, more of a kid that's going to go out and just, he's quick, he's agile, he can go move. But I like that we have 3 big uglies get recognized for Lineman of the Year. That's nice. That's nice. A lot of times the skill kids, they'll do things like, well, we're going to create an athlete of the year, if they can't find a place for him.
Right.
So I think it's completely appropriate to have three big boys up front get recognized for lineman of the year.
And we'll continue on the Carl Albert bandwagon here. Special teams player of the year goes to Houston Russell, and the Ironman player of the year, co-Ironman player of the year, Kobe Cruz, also Carl Albert, had a good state championship game as well. Yep. And the other one, Guthrie represented on the all-district 5A-2, and Kaden Ballard Stevenson. And boy, Kaden really came on in his senior campaign offensively, defensively, and special teams. So I thought this was a good award to recognize him in his senior campaign.
Yeah, I mean, first talk about the Cruz kid, as you said, had a very, very good game in the state championship game. One of those kids that's just, as the name implies, Ironman player of the year.
Yeah.
Just those kids you can count on, those kids that probably hardly ever come off the field. They're out there on special teams. They play both sides of the ball at different times. Just outstanding football players. And a neat recognition. Kaden Ballard, KBS, as we like to call him, we've watched the kid since Little League. I mean, so we've literally seen him play football his entire life. What the thing that impresses me the most about Kaden is his maturity level has went up each year, as you would hope it would, but you don't always see that with kids.
Right.
Kaden was a kid at one time. People got to remember he was a starting quarterback as a sophomore for the Blue Jays, and unselfishly, the coaching staff went to him and said, we think you can help us more playing wide receiver, playing, starting at that corner, being that return specialist, and there was two or three different games this year for the Blue Jays where Kaden had over 3 touchdowns. One game, I believe he had 5, accounted for 5 touchdowns. And it was that corner, that the best corner on the field for the Blue Jays every ball game, and became a really good leader, as the years went by. So really happy to see Kaden KBS get some recognition as well.
And also had some blocked field goals and extra points this year. I mean, he is the Iron Man. It's a good definition for Kaden Ballard Stevenson here in his senior campaign.
It really is.
It's Phil, let's move over real quick. I'm going to move my chart here to the first team offense. And the quarterback, of course, it's a pretty good quarterback district with Harris and Tarman at the top. But Josh Raines for Guthrie, and you mentioned Kaden was the quarterback for Guthrie. They moved Josh into that spot. Really did not grow up playing quarterback. I think he did play his freshman year, but they had other plans for him other places. But Josh Raines comes in and gave everything he had. Of course, he's going on to play college baseball with his 90-mile-per-hour fastball. Josh Raines, one of the tough Blue Jays to come through here.
Yeah, and I think the thing we like about it, it's great to see Josh get recognition. Obviously, when you got Ben Harris and Luke Tarman play the same position, I think the coaches did a good job here realizing this is a kid that deserves recognition, had a great career for over 4-year time frame. He could be an Iron Man as well. I mean,
yes.
His natural position is linebacker, but he started at tailback as a sophomore also for the Blue Jays. I mean, so he's played tailback, he's played linebacker, he's the punter for the Blue Jays, much like Ben Harmon.
He played he played defensive end in the playoff game against Collinsville.
Yeah, stepped in at defensive end, which he's never, to my knowledge, had never played before. He's just that all-around program kid, and when I say that, I'm not saying he doesn't have talent. The kid's got a lot of talent, a lot of athletic talent, but he's willing to do whatever the coaching staff and his teammates need him to do, and had a very good year. Josh was a kid that got it done primarily with his legs, could throw the ball. Josh was never able, being that linebacker mentality, was never able to figure out you don't need to throw the 90-mile-an-hour plus fastball when they're 5 yards from you. But could really spin the ball when needed to. And at the end of the season this year, had some really good passing games, did some really good job throwing the ball for the Blue Jays in that first round in the quarterfinals game as well. So congratulations to Josh. Well-deserved. Good to see him on the first team offense.
First team running back Javion Hunt of Carl Albert. He has signed to play football at the University of Arkansas. And you talk about Javion, there were so many weapons at Carl Albert. His numbers were down from a year ago. Just simply he was sharing the ball more with Control Bazell, who we'll be talking about 1 year from today on this list. Is more than likely the overall player of the year, much like Ben Harris. Yeah. We'll see how that plays out. But really, his number wasn't called as much as needed. this season, but still had a very productive senior campaign in that two-headed monster. I mean, Contrell Bazell is better because of Javion Hunt, and Javion made Contrell better, and they made Ben better, and so those two carrying the football helped each other out in a Javion Hunt first-team running back.
Well, you know, when you're on a team that goes 52-2 over a 4-year period, there's obviously a lot of really, really, really good football players that you're playing next to. And you talked about it. Obviously, he's going to an SEC school, Division I college, to play college football, so he can play a little football. You know, I'm going to be real honest. He's like a unicorn to me though, because we've heard about him for years, and you see it. You know, when you see him on the field, he stands out. I mean, he looks the part.
Yeah,
and he's a fine player. But again, he wasn't getting 20, 25 touches. He wasn't being asked to do those things. And some of these running backs are kids that don't really get their motor going until they get 15, 20, 25 touches. And as big as he is, you know, you got to believe if he had been asked to carry the ball 20, 25 times a game, he probably would have put up gaudy numbers. But he's just, you know, going to Arkansas. That Arkansas committed yesterday to the University of Arkansas. So it'll be fun to see what he does over the next 4 or 5 years for the Razorbacks.
Wide receivers on the first-team offense, Woodward's Max Cheap, Nash Kaufman of Guyman, and Cole Limber of Bishop McGinnis are your three wide receivers. Max Cheap, I saw several games where he had multiple touchdowns in the game. Of course, Cole Limber, the game-winning, he hauled in 2 great catches in the come-from-behind victory in the final game inside Purple Stadium to take down McAllister in the late seconds. Cole Limber came on really strong. It was a big part, Tarman run, Taft, handed off to him. But when you want to stretch it out, Cole Limber was Luke Tarman's number 1 target.
Well, obviously we got to see, we didn't get to see we got to see all these kids this year, and these are all good picks at wideout. I've been trying to, scratch my head. Of course, those of us who followed Guthrie like we did, we call their games every Friday night. I think there could, you could see KBS on that as a wide receiver, but he's represented there with the Iron Man, obviously. So they've got him on with the overall season awards, which is, I don't want to say a step up, but it's great recognition. But Max Cheap, if you remember, his brother was the quarterback for Woodward. So it was cheap to cheap. And
Tarman to Tarman.
Tarman to Tarman. So I don't know if Nash has a brother out there, but we sure know that Max Cheap and Cole Limber do. But Cole, Max, Nash, all, because Nash on a Guyman team that didn't that didn't put up a lot of wins, obviously, this year, he stood out. He was a kid, though, that you could say, oh, yeah, no, he'd play for us. He'd be a starter. He'd be good. He'd be, he's a kid that if Nash Kaufman played at McGinnis or played at Carl Albert, he'd be starting for those 2 teams too at wideout. So obviously well-deserved and great representation for 5A-2 at the wide receiver position.
If Ben Harris had a brother thrown into a wide receiver, I think they would be able to beat OU if there was a Harris to Harris. Luckily for everybody else, there's not another Harris.
Yeah, you really don't want to think about that. That'd be bad. So yeah.
Tight end for the first team offense, Caleb Sangeri of Carl Albert. Really, not really. The few games that I saw, we saw Bixby in person, and then in the state championship. I don't remember any much pass routes that he went out on. But he would definitely block you for Hunt and Bazell and allow time for Harris to throw the football. But a very good, tough kid. He sticks out to big 85 offensively and defensively this year for Carl Albert.
Well, we remember in the state championship game, he was hindered a little bit with a leg injury late in the game, but found his way back in the field, came off, had to be he had to be assisted off the field, and he was out for a short bit and was right back out there. Obviously a very tough kid, a good team guy. You're right. I think this is recognition for his blocking and what he did down up front. We've talked about this, 5A-2, 5A teams in general typically don't throw the ball a great deal to their tight ends. If they are going to throw, it's going to be more outside and down, vertical down the field. But it's, obviously recognition for what Caleb did up front blocking, and just being that overall great football player that he is.
Offensive lineman first team include Donnie Berry of Piedmont, Kenyon Lamb of Woodward, Devon Moore of Guthrie, Corey O'Hagan, Carl Albert, Hunter Spears of Bishop McGinnis, Kevin Sovo, Lawton Eisenhower, and Ethan Zerger of Piedmont. Again, you have 5 linemen. They had a couple linemen on the first team, but more than 5. But that's okay. They recognize there as the offensive lineman of the year. Good to see Devon Moore of Guthrie. He had a great senior campaign, came on and was an anchor on that offensive line for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, and I think, of course, Devon's a Guthrie kid. We see him all the time, so well-deserved to be on this list. The other kids stand out. Of course, this makes 3 senior offensive linemen, for Carl Albert. So it's, which should give everybody a little bit of hope. The good thing with all this red up here is there's a lot of seniors moving away from Carl Albert, but don't get too excited. They seem to always reload, but at least in this, what I called the death march of the last 4 years, where if you're in 5A, you kind of found yourself sitting there going, there's, pretty good, but we got to somehow figure out a way to beat Carl Albert.
Carl Albert was definitely in the spot to win it this year, a very senior heavy team. And I'm sure Control Bazell will have Carl Albert in a pretty good spot next year as well. The first team All-District 5A-2, defensive lineman Andrew Chambers of McGinnis, Keon Dickerson of Carl Albert, Mason Steele of Carl Albert, Zach Thompson of Guthrie, Riley Waits-Cox of Piedmont, and Nathan Wiggins of Guthrie. And Nathan Wiggins of Guthrie, a preferred walk-on offered by Oklahoma State University. I believe he's going to go play college football at another school, but good to see him. And I got to tell you that the Guthrie defensive front was pretty darn good this year, and Nathan Wiggins and Zach Thompson was a big part of that.
Well, Zach and Nathan both have really good motors, both physical kids. What you want in a defensive lineman. Had a little nasty in him. Nathan has a lot of nasty in him. And Zach, first year playing defensive line. So what a great accomplishment for Zach, his first year playing in that position, to be recognized as a first team all 5A2 district selection. But, both those young men are going to be sorely missed by the Blue Jays next year. But I'll tell you, there's some other kids on here. This Mason Steele kid for Carl Albert, very good player. Obviously Keanu's great on he's a man child, but and Andrew Chambers, another one of those kids, again, not going to overpower you necessarily, but just really smart, quick, off the ball, just solid football players. Young man from Piedmont. We didn't play Piedmont this year. We never got to see Piedmont this year, which is unusual. Usually we'll see them at some point, either in the playoffs or somewhere, either calling a game or when they play Guthrie. Obviously, due to COVID reasons this year, weren't able to play Piedmont, but, just really solid lineup of defensive linemen and, well-deserved for these kids.
Yeah, good group of linebackers here. Ezra Gustafson of Carl Albert, Caden Hendren, who we remember very well. We didn't see him this year in person, but we
remember him from the year before.
Yes, absolutely, and able to watch him against that Carl Albert game. His teammate Joey Mars there, and Drew Shomas of McGinnis, another very good defensive player for Bishop McGinnis this year. So that's a pretty solid group of linebackers for the all 5A2 first team.
Yeah, and I think linebacker is a position that in 5A2 you always kind of look at because they're kind of known for producing really good linebackers. I mean, 5A2. I think over the years, if you go back and look at some of the different selections to this team at the linebacker position, it's kind of a who's who out there in Oklahoma football for 5A for darn sure. But, just a great group of kids. Again, a lot of red, a lot of yellow on here too.
Yeah.
These last few slots and deservedly so.
Defensive back, Decatur Warrior of Piedmont, Adam Wheeler of Bishop McGinnis. The kicker goes to Preston Fancher of Piedmont, and Bo Phelps, also the punter for the first team. Second team, quarterback Levi Davis of Piedmont. Running back goes to Brock Detar, I hope I got that right, of Piedmont. Wide receivers, Jalen Allison of Guthrie, Gavin Hines of Carl Albert. Tight end, Cam West for Piedmont. And the offensive lineman, second team offense, Mason Campbell, Guthrie, Jarrett Dean of Guthrie, Zy Moore of Carl Albert, Sage Schmidt of Lawton Eisenhower, Dax Swainer of Carl Albert, and Dawson Whitewater of the Woodward Boomers are your second team offense. And your second team defense, defensive lineman Kip Nichols, got to be worth some points there with the last name Nichols there.
Well, I mean, it's, goes without saying. I mean, good, strong Christian young boy.
Cole Bolinski of Piedmont, the other defensive linebackers, James Clark, Lawton Eisenhower, and Dondi King of Carl Alberts. Defensive backs on second team, Aaron Ferry of Woodward, Mason Gonzalez of Piedmont, Derek Simmons of Lawton Eisenhower. Your second team kicker, Devin Dollins of Lawton Eisenhower, and the punter, Javier Sinicio of Guyman.
Better you than me trying to get those all in.
And I actually did try a little bit, but anyway, those are your District 5A-2 all teams there. Again, Ben Harris is your player of the year. Offensive player of the year going to Luke Tarman, and the defensive player of the year, Nathan Mooney. And again, one of the toughest districts in all the state of Oklahoma. There's some other good ones out there, but by far, I mean, District 5A-2, I'm starting to lose the amount of seasons how best this district. 5A-1 had an argument there for a little bit, but then you get into playoffs, and 5A-2 won 3 out of the 4 a few years ago. Well, okay, right. 5A-2 is still king of the world in 5A football. But another good year, and we looked at the linebackers, and all right, where's Control Bazell? Remember, as Phil alluded to, these for senior players only. You mix in the juniors and sophomores, but they'll have their chance in the coming years. So another great list, Phil, and unfortunately, there's just a handful more of football games left this year before we get ready for 2021.
Yeah, and I think what's cool is we get ready to wrap up this weekend. We're lucky we get to, and I really mean this, very honored, but we're very lucky we get to participate and do production and do play-by-play and color and for a lot of these games, do production for all of them, and then we get to call several of the games as well. And what I love about it is we get to see great football players that we only get to hear about, and then we get to actually watch them.
Right.
And it's amazing the talent level across the state of Oklahoma. I mean, we're getting ready to see some great football players this weekend in the 2A and the A game. We were breaking down some of the A kids before we came on tonight, and I think people think, oh, A football, they must be a bunch of little kids that aren't really, bless their hearts.
Yeah.
No, there's some monsters out there. I mean, I'm going to tell you, there's some kids out there that look the part and can flat play. So should be another great weekend to put a bow on this 2020 season. And then hopefully next year we'll be able to have a normal season.
Yes. And
get a full season in. And that's something that, too, I think I want to congratulate all the kids and the coaches for just persevering through this season, because it's been crazy. You think about so many teams took games on 1 day's notice. Some teams took games in 8 hours notice because of COVID, just trying to get games in for their kids and to keep trying to get better. And that's a tall task, for everybody, whether it's the ADs at those schools that are hosting, they got to get ready. You got to get travel. So everybody's worked doubly hard this year. And I think we all as fans should just be really thankful and appreciate what these young men and the coaching staffs have done for the state of Oklahoma in football. Did a great job.
A lot of frustration. I know Piedmont was 5 minutes within Gelsman Stadium to get ready to play football, had to turn around as some other programs had across the state of Oklahoma as well. So congratulations to all those on the 5A-2 all-district teams. And Phil, appreciate it. We'll do it again next time.
Sounds good.
For Phil Nichols, I'm Chris Evans. This has been the All-District 5A-2 teams.